It's alright. It's fine. I just need to know your teams. You guys are doing the second motion.
Yes.
So that we solve these that talent shows, i.e. American Idol should not use their contestants in groups, right?
Yep.
Alright, hi guys. Welcome to round round 4 of CISDC 2018. So on government we have Scrambled Motions, and on opposition we have Pass the Ball. So on the motion, this house believes that talent shows, i.e. American Idol, should not use their contestants' deeply personal and tragic stories. Start the debate. I welcome Prime Minister here.
You don't mind if I just like
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning to my fellow opposition, my government team, and Madam Chair. Today, if you turn on your TV and you decide to watch American Idol or you decide to watch America's Got Talent, I can almost guarantee you that the winner will either be a little girl, a very poor person, someone that has been through a lot, and probably someone that maybe even, and in some cases, isn't even as talented, but still wins because of their backstory. And we argue that the winning standards for this debate today, ladies and gentlemen, is that which side can best provide the best conditions of living, and also based on, and give talent shows winners based on how much talent they actually have. And what our side wants is we would rather talent shows not use their backstories, but instead allow these shows, which are so often based on opinion, to be based on talent itself, meaning cut out all of that backstory and not illustrate it at all. We understand that doing something based on motivation from whether it be a dead mother or whether it be you're coming from a poor background, that you will truly feel fulfilled. But we argue that it adds in no way to your favor except to garner sympathy and does not add to your talent at all, which is exactly what a talent show is for. And this cannot happen because we argue that even if someone is poor or if someone is dying or comes from divorced parents, then they should attain and the whole justification that they should be able to win just because they can gain sympathy is completely wrong. You should be able to earn what you earned because you earned it. And our end game is that we want a world where we can get what is deserved because people are best at it, especially in talent shows. I have 3 arguments for you today, Madam Chair. The first being exploitation of these stories from the studios. Number two, the meaning of success. And number three, preserving a meritocracy. Let me begin with my first one. Let me be frank. These stories are used to gain attention. Do not let it trick you to think that these studios care about these people. They are sensationalized and exaggerated on purpose. And once those stories do die out, the studios will leave the singers or performers as soon as they found them. If people who are privileged and powerful are running companies and gaining a lot of profit based on people who are less fortunate, less sound, and less lucky as them to be put in that position. And we find the complete idea of exploitation of these stories completely disgusting. It's like taking legless lambs and selling tickets for people to see them. You're just selling based on the fact that these people, oh, I'm so tragic, you better vote for me. That is not how we see it on your side. This happens on an enormous level. And while on our side, it is based on merit and is completely voided. This debate should not rely on whether it is rags to riches or who deserves it more, but the opposition needs to understand that it is a deep personal trauma, something that is potentially traumatizing, and those people who join these shows so often join because they are fresh from the wound, they are raw, and they do feel the motivation from these events. And it is a complete exploitation of people who are not even of a sound mind, let alone a sound heart, to go on a stage and let people vote for them based on that. And sure, they'll win, but in 20 years, they'll regret it because they have bared their heart, and we realize that while they worked it, and they will eventually realize that while they worked their butt off, a giant company has been traumatizing your entire personal family to gain money. And all those people that they supposedly inspired, like opposition will tell you that they're going to inspire a whole nation. Sure, they're going to inspire a whole nation for a while. But then when that inspiration doesn't work, because let's say you do get inspired and you do try, but then what happens? Let's say you're not as tragic. Your story is not as tragic. You're not as cute or you're as charismatic. So they don't accept you. Your whole world is immediately crushed because you have realized your whole life you've been raised on the feeling that I can do anything. When in actuality, in these talent shows, you have to be a certain way, act a certain way, look a certain way to gain anything. And on to my second point of the meaning of success. Let me just remind everyone what success is and what it means to people and how it affects us, because when we feel successful, because when we do something that is right or something that we feel we have deserved and has been through our personal effort. And sure, I will agree with you full way. These people are not going to regret it in the moment. It will feel amazing. It will feel like after a poor life, you finally be given the karma that you deserve of being a good person and finally winning a talent show. So let's put this in a scenario. Let's say that I am a performer and I'm an artist. Let's say I also have a tragic backstory. I'm a cancer surviving patient. I have a dead mom. I have a divorced parents or something along those lines. And it wouldn't help that I'm that I'm actually pretty talented or that I'm actually quite attractive. Let's say that I do get to the finals and that I do win and I'm happy, except for the fact that I won by having a backstory. I tell you what, not tomorrow, not the next day, but maybe in 10 years or 20 years, when they look at themselves in the mirror and they realize that the new winner is someone who is more tragic, who is more attractive, who has more appeal to the masses, then they will feel that they have not deserved anything at all. Yeah, before I go on.
Sorry, they're not generalizing that every single winner in every single American Idol or all these type of shows are actually based on their backstories?
No. Let me clarify. I believe maybe I'll have that. It's so clear. But I will continue that further in my speech later on. Sorry. After being told that you are the best, these people that have won realize that they are older now, they are less part of the trend, and so they are completely abdicated. And so I go on to my third point about protecting a meritocracy. It is a human tendency to help people. I understand that. And while talent shows, this is to answer your question, yes, they do have an effect because you can be as talented as you want, but if people do not like you, who says that they're going to vote for you? Because these emotions do play a role on talent shows. When I'm watching a talent show, I do feel things because I like the music and maybe I like what they come from because it relates to me. And ultimately, a talent show depends on how happy you are, how relatable you feel with the person, and it doesn't even depend on how much talent they have anymore, which is exactly what we're trying to prevent. We know full well that people will vote for an underdog based on how disparate and how poverty-ridden they are, which is insanely damaging because, first of all, you are cheating so many people who have worked their whole lives out of a opportunity that could give them true success. If someone from a poorer background or someone with a less favorable odds or drug addiction, they are instantly made more reliable and desirable than someone who is maybe a white person who has taken classes of singing their whole life and has worked their whole life just so they can get there? Is it fair, really, to give those that do not have as much talent the same kind of opportunity? And we're not arguing that these people should not be allowed to join these shows. We are arguing that these stories should be completely left out in the interest of talent. And on our side, we are maintaining meritocracy and giving talent titles to talented people. And sorry to say, I have to be frank, but if one is not talented enough, then they do not deserve it. They can still find jobs in support groups and talent shows, but why should it be, I ask the opposition, that a talent show is supposed to support them? Thank you.
Yeah. I thank the Prime Minister. Now, to open up the case of side opposition, welcome Leader of Opposition, here.
Firstly, as the Leader of Opposition, I would like to go through a few rebuttals on what we have towards side government, and then we would like to continue with our substantive arguments. So firstly, side government mentioned that they can guarantee that the winners would either be a little girl or someone poor. But on our side, we said we can't generalize these winners of these talent shows, as they aren't always necessarily these little girls or people who are poor. We see that certain winners such as Philip Phillips or many other winners who won American Idol or other talent shows from years ago, we said these people aren't little girls, these people aren't poor. These people just have a normal background just like everyone else. So why are we generalizing these people, saying that they are poor, that they have to have a specific background to win a talent show? Next, side government also mentioned that we have to look a certain way or to be a certain way to win. So basically what side government is trying to say here is that they're thinking towards biased voting, with people voting for people who they think is charismatic, for people who they think that needs the money the most. But we see that this isn't really the case, because we see that by having empathy or sympathy towards someone, and we see that currently in status quo, not all the winners of American Idol or these other talent shows are necessarily, like I mentioned earlier, poor or are little girls who are charismatic. We see that, like I mentioned earlier, we can't generalize these people on these winners of these talent shows based on their background. Next, side government thirdly mentioned that it's not fair as they get an advantage with their background. But we see that this is the way the market and the money and the industry works. We see that these companies such as American Idol or America's Got Talent, they keep these contestants. Yes, we do agree that they keep these contestants because they want to earn money. But we see that this is not something that we can really put a change into, as these companies need the money. They need the money to fund these shows, to improve it for the better. We see that this can actually bring us the viewers to give us a better entertainment and to actually benefit us with the money which they use to fund their shows. Continuing with our arguments today. So firstly, we see that these deeply personal stories and tragic stories are the ones which are given consent by the contestants to be published. And we see that with the consent of these participants, why should we then disallow them to share such deeply personal and tragic stories? And yes, back to their point where they said that it could be an unfair advantage. But yet, like I mentioned earlier, that is just how the industry goes. And we can't just generalize and say that every time there's a little girl or every time there's someone charismatic that they would definitely win. So next, we see that these personal stories and tragic stories can actually help the audience feel empathy towards that person, or to understand why he or she has gone through such stories and the reason why they joined the competition. So as you see, as the competition progresses towards the semi-finals, the quarters, or maybe the finals, we see that it has become the audience's vote, the public's vote, after gone through preliminary rounds being judged by the judges. And we see that for the audience to vote, they would of course need to know a little background story. And why and with the consent of these participants sharing their deeply personal and tragic stories, we see that this is no harm to share these such things. Now, another point that we would like to make is that these stories can inspire others and give others hope. Yes, side government have mentioned that, maybe just for a while. But we see that by sharing a simple story can actually benefit someone a lot. Whether it's just for a while or whether it's for a long term, it can still benefit someone in the end of the day. For example, we see that if there was a contestant being bullied in the past, or of a contestant that has cancer, or someone's mom or their mom or dad died, we see that this can actually show the people that they are not alone, that they still have hope, and that every successful person's journey has up and downs. And it's not just a perfect life that they live, but everyone has a life where they go through certain things that they are happy about, but certain things that they are sad about at the same time. So that is why this can also inspire people and actually give them hope and make them feel like they're not alone. Next, like I've mentioned earlier, on how these companies make money because it's like in the market. So like I mentioned, this can actually improve these shows and actually make it better, more entertaining for these people. Yes, they might not pick the right winner in the end of the day, but we see that the audience, mostly the audience cares about is the entertainment that they receive. And if the entertainment that these shows receive is great, why would they have the incentive, or why would they even want to change such things which could lose them money? We see that by gaining the views and by gaining the amount of cash that they are getting now from the market, because of all these views coming in from the people, the companies wouldn't then see an incentive to really put a change in actually not use their contestants' deeply personal and tragic stories. And like I've mentioned earlier, we see that some people, we do acknowledge the fact on side opposition that some people might fake a background story just to look good or to get more votes in the end. But we see that if we do discourage these fake things, but we still see that there are many other platforms where certain fake things are shared. For example, YouTube, for example, social media platforms. We see that there are still many other ways where people still fake things. But yet, if we want to ban something used in a talent show, why not ban these other social media platforms like YouTube and other ones? Before I continue, yes, sir.
Can the opposition team please justify how the unlikely chance that someone wins because of the backstory?
Like I mentioned earlier in my speech, I gave examples on how not always little girls or poor men do definitely win. Like we said, a talent show keeps these people in the end because they want to have the money. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will have them go all the way and succeed and actually like win the whole show. And we see that not always, like I mentioned earlier, with the few examples of those American Idol winners and those talent show winners, not always that they are these charismatic people, as you mentioned, but sometimes they are actually just normal people who just want to showcase their talent, to be normal like us, and to actually show to the world what they can do. So what have I brought to you so far, for side opposition, sorry. So far we brought to you on how with the audience understanding these background and people, they can actually use it to inspire themselves and can actually feel hope and know that life isn't always a successful, people's life isn't always as successful, as they have up and downs as well. And which my second speaker will elaborate further. And that is why I've never been prouder to oppose on side opposition. Thank you.
I thank Leader of Opposition and continue with the case of side government. I call upon the Secretary.
Huh? Oh. Now, side opposition has come up and given to us many points, some irrelevant and some very easily taken down. And I will take it down with my rebuttals in this debate. Let me start with my rebuttals. Okay, firstly, you have tried to mention that backstories might not have an effect on people's results. It might not have an effect on people's voting. Then the first question is if it has no effect whatsoever, why even keep it in? And secondly, even if you believe that yes, there are a lot of cases where people have won without these tragic backstories, what about the cases where these people do win just because of these backstories? What if the backstories are the things that tip the scales? What if two people who have equal singing capability, but one has a sadder background? What happens in this scenario? What happens in this scenario is that people are more likely to empathize with the person who comes from a sadder background, and this person ends up winning because of this advantage. Moreover, you tried to mention that companies need the money. Firstly, this is completely irrelevant to the debate, as the company's interest is not relevant to what the people's story is about. And you try to mention how having more money will improve the show, but first, another thing, this is not relevant to the debate. And even so, these people's incentive is not to improve the show or improve your entertainment quality, it's to earn more money. That's the fact of how companies work. Moreover, you try to say that the people's journey is important. And sure, it is important, but to what extent do we allow this? We believe on our side that a deep journey, sure, you're allowed to talk about that, but people shouldn't be forced to give a deeply personal story just to win votes. We do not believe it should be forced on other people. I will further elaborate on this in my speech. And another rebuttal is, why should the show change it if the money comes in? Firstly, this isn't a policy debate, so this is not relevant. But secondly, even so, what the whole point of this debate is about the feelings of the contestant, how this affects the contestant and how this affects the show in general. We also try to mention that fake stories can be excused because fake things exist everywhere. Maybe so, but a talent show isn't YouTube. A talent show isn't supposed to be a place where people share sob stories. A talent show is supposed to be a place where people showcase their skills and capabilities to the rest of the world. Now, let me get on with my arguments. Now, I have 5 arguments for this debate. Firstly, the best and worst case scenario. Secondly, the manufactured consent. Thirdly, making money off these people's lives and stories. Fourthly, mocking and exaggeration. Fifthly, personal harm post-show, also known as regret. Okay, let me start with manufactured consent. So sure, these people in the first place may consent to it in the spur of the moment, and they may consent to telling these deeply stories, but it's mostly out of necessity, whether it's to win the competition or just to join the competition. People are agreeing because they're being promised a shot at stardom. They're being promised a shot to become famous. Who wouldn't want that? That's the fact of the matter. And with these kinds of promises being shown to the people, how else are they supposed to say no to this? How else are they supposed to say, no, I don't want to capitalize on my already tough experiences and just walk away from the show just like that? Because the fact of the matter is, everyone wants to be popular. Just that little voice in the back of head wants you. And that's what these businesses do. That's what these shows do. They take an advantage of that. And when it comes to deeply personal and tragic stories, nobody truly wants to share them. But they are forced to in these kinds of scenarios in hopes of winning or trying to get the audience sympathy. Before I go on, yes.
So why does the whole government bench keep assuming that everybody who goes to the idol, who goes to these talent shows, who has deeply personal tragic stories, just want attention?
Firstly, we do not assume that everyone wants attention. Like I mentioned, some people might just be doing it to join. Some of it might just be part of the contest requirements, etc., etc. Because these people, once they join the tournament, they basically become property of these people who run the show. They become property of people who run the talent show. They have no other choice, otherwise they get kicked out of the tournament. Now, to continue on, making money off these people's lives and stories. Now, we believe that this is generally immoral, as these companies are earning money off these people's suffering and experiences, and these people, as I mentioned before, basically lack a choice, because how do you turn down an opportunity at glory? They also take advantage of these people's traumas for their own profit. And that's where we believe the line has to be drawn, where people have to suffer the emotional baggage and the pain of sharing a deeply personal experience and reliving it. That's where we believe that, sit down, we believe that the line has to be drawn. Now, thirdly, mocking and sensationalization. When it comes down to it, these shows are all about entertainment, as you have tried to mention. But there's a point where these shows start to exaggerate and try to grab the people's attention more and more. And that's to garner media attention or just public attention. And when these people who took the effort to tell and the anguish to tell their deeply personal stories have to cope with the fact that this industry is just twisting their story, exaggerating it, misinterpreting it, that can lead to one or two outcomes. Rather, one, their talent is looked over by the media for the story that's being brought forward, and they have to deal with the emotional trauma of their story not even being the true story, and them still being attributed to this story. Or the second scenario, where if they win the competition, success is discredited and instead attributed to their story instead of their talent. We believe that this in general harms the contestants, whether it be emotionally, especially after taking all the effort throughout the show and even with telling their personal story. Another point is regret. While in the moment where they are offered, there seem to be no downsides in sharing their stories, and the downsides basically seem minimal and outweighed by the opportunity. Post-show, the circumstances are very different. If they lose, they may deeply regret sharing their story as they have gained no benefit and all the while become known for their sensationalized sob story rather than for their talent or their own personality. Moreover, if they win, once again, they'll become known for the sob story, and further, they may feel guilt for winning, not because of talent, but because of only their backstory. Finally, the best case, worst case scenario. I will cover this quickly. Now, their best case scenario has an accurately shared story. The contestant wins because of talent, and everyone is happy. However, we still have to remember that these are people who can be dropped by companies at any time. They may feel guilt because of their stories. They may feel that they may become only known for their stories. Their whole story becomes eventually just used for companies' profits. Whereas in our worst case scenario, none of these stories exist. And maybe these people don't win, and maybe some great people do win. And even then, at least we keep these people's privacy safe. At least we ensure that these people win the shows or leave the shows under fair pretenses, and the show's integrity as a talent show stays the same. And with that, I'd like to thank you.
Okay. I thank Deputy Prime Minister. Now to continue on with the case of side opposition, welcome Deputy Leader of Opposition here.
So we inside opposition today believes that talent shows should use their contestants' deeply personal and tragic stories. Before I started my speech, I have a few rebuttals against that government. They came and told us on and on and on and on this exact same points, saying how winners are usually about their personal and tragic stories, and we've taught that down by telling you that's not always true. The example that my first speaker has already gave. He won not because of his tragic stories, but he won because of how the talent that they have. You can't come up here and assume that every single winner it's just because they win just because of their tragic stories. But it's talent shows are called talent shows not because of their deeply tragic stories, but because of the talent they are being broadcasted on. Next, they've told us how it's an unfair advantage, and we've rebutted that too. We told you that no, because at last it's based on your talents. It's a choice of the people that people make. You have no right as government to tell people that is an unfair advantage when it's not, because it's clearly the choice of the people or the judges if they want to give the win to whoever. And who are you to say who should be given a win or not? And they said that the company's interests are not relevant and that people's incentive is to get money. But if you think about it, why do people watch talent shows? Why do people go to all these stuff? For entertainment. It's simple. What will happen when you take away part of the entertainment, which is part of the deeply personal and tragic stories, because it gives, why are these so important? It gives people inspiration, gives them hope. Even though side government has said that's not exactly a valid point, but we hear that that is. Because the point is, it gives people the incentive or the inspiration to keep moving on, to keep pushing forward no matter how hard your time is, and you're never alone, no matter what you go through. And that's what, and if you take away that part from a talent show, these viewers that actually broadcast to actually try to relate to these type of problems will go down.
Why?
I'll get one later. What will happen when viewers' interests go down? Companies don't get the money enough to fund. Yes, companies rely on viewers to fund their competitions, if you guys didn't know that. And they actually, this is a really big part of a company. Why they get money is because for entertainment. If you take away these aspects, they won't have it anymore. And they've told us that a talent show is a place where people, I'll get one later, where people can showcase their abilities. Yes, we totally agree with you. But the fact is that you guys are not getting is that not everybody who joins these competitions go just because of the greed. You can't come up here and make us an assumption about how nobody can say no to stardom just because they have a tragic story. They came up to told us that also people who have an emotional toll because they're sharing such a personal and tragic story, and then it'll be really hard for them. But the thing is, these stories are shared for consent. No, they aren't the properties of these talent shows just because they're in it. They still get the choice if they want to broadcast it or not. It's always of consent. It's never it's never forced a choice. It's never a choice that's forced. I'll get one later. It's never a choice that's forced onto somebody to make it. And basically, they've also told us that it may be cheating many people, but that's not true because at the end of the day, it's up to the people's choice on who's a winner or not. It's their choice, and people don't judge. Not everybody. That's what side government do not get. It's not everybody judge a talent just because if they have deeply personal or tragic stories. Side government came up and just basically assumed that every winner is just up there because they have deeply personal and tragic stories. Get one later. And the fact is that is not true because that is not happening in society nowadays. So onto my first a substantive point for my first speaker. We've told you that there's nothing wrong with status quo in the moment. More winners actually win not because of their personal truth or personal stories, but they actually win because they have talent. Like the example my first speaker already gave. Most speakers do not win just because they have a tragic story or some sort of that. And end of the day, like both sides have already been emphasizing on it. It is a talent show. It's not a show for deep. Yes, we agree. It may have influenced the start of the ballots, but after that, it's entirely not true because it doesn't mean that you have a tragic story that automatically everybody will vote for you. It doesn't mean that. It just means the reason why these informations are so crucial to a talent show is because people vote because of they need a background information of somebody. And if it somehow turns up into a deeply personal or tragic stories, then sure. But not everybody votes in that way, yes.
Is the government saying that talent shows to give the right decision, they need some form of tragic background story?
No, we aren't saying that. We've been telling you again and again and again that we say we believe that talent shows should use it, but it's up to their consent. We aren't forcing people, and not every contestant has to have a poor background or has to have a deeply personal or tragic story to actually enter in. And we feel that side government does not understand this debate today, as they've been making up assumptions and basically generalizing everybody to a degree of stardom, which we tell you that's not, because certain people who actually has deeply personal tragic stories actually work really hard to get to where they are. And for you to now start generalizing and making assumptions about their lives which aren't true is what side opposition does not stand for today. And we feel that this is really important for if contestants have personal or tragic stories, is because it gives audience an emotional connection. People are able to relate. Why is that good? Because that is a form of inspiration. It gives hope to people. It makes people see, oh, that person was able to work from all the way down. Why can't I? It gives them a certain push that people sometimes need. And we feel that is why talent shows should use their contestants if they have deeply personal or tragic stories. To summarize everything that side opposition I brought to you today is that we say that people it gives inspiration and hope to people around the world who's looking into these movies, talent shows, to actually give them inspiration to actually work harder, maybe by somehow they're able to pursue this. And in the end of the day, companies are people who actually companies are people. They make money off of these, and if you take away these aspects of it, it will harm us in a way where people will the fundings will drop and everything will not be a stable condition. And we feel that it wouldn't influence the choice of the winners if they have deeply personal or tragic stories or not, because end of the day it's about your talent and not if you have a story or not. And with that, I'll be proud to approve.
Okay. I think Deputy Leader of Opposition, and to summarize the case of side government, I welcome government with your view.
Madam Speaker, companies will always keep sympathetic contestants in order to maintain its views and in order to achieve all the benefits like side government has kept trying to talk about in order to fund the shows. I will start off with my rebuttals first. Firstly, they mentioned that these interesting stories will be able to get more funds for the show so that the show can improve. And I think that this is not very relevant. But anyway, if the show knows that the stories that the stories are what gives them all this money and all this profit and all these funds, the focus of the show will start shifting towards the stories rather than the talent of these contestants. And shows aren't actively working to improve their shows either. They are working to their aim is to earn money and as much money as possible. And so if it means to use more better stories, more interesting stories, more empathetic stories, they will use it. Secondly, you mentioned that it provides empathy and inspires people. However, this form of empathy of using someone's deepest personal and tragic stories isn't relevant to the competition at all. Yes, you can showcase a person's journey to becoming an artist, like maybe failed auditions and things like that. But tragic and raw stories are completely different from just plainly your journey towards becoming an artist. And we think that on site government, we think that these tragic stories should not be advertised in order to gain more views at all. Besides, how is gaining empathy from the audience in any way relevant for a talent show? A talent show should be showcasing talent, but not empathy. And you mentioned that taking away the aspect of tragic shows will take away viewers. In the first place, the target audience isn't supposed to be the empathetic people, but rather the people who appreciate talent, and talent show is supposed to showcase talent and not showcase stories in the first place. And you mentioned about how people give consent for their stories to be shared. However, these companies often persuade these contestants at their lowest point. When these companies tell these people at their lowest point that you can have a shot at success if you give me your story. And often these consents are manufactured consent, like second speaker have already mentioned. And manufactured consent. And this manufactured consent is detrimental to the person. Fine consent in a situation where they do not actually want to sign consent, but are all too in this situation decide to sign that in order to your own lifestyle. And you are exploiting these vulnerable people in order to gain more views. We rather understand that people have no inspiration rather than inspiration. And we think that it's actually from talent and not from inspiring stories or athletic stories of these contestants. Yes.
Remember, your you say fake inspirations, but not every contestant has an empathy personal trajectory that's fake or in common suicide.
Yes, not every single contestant has a fake inspirational story. However, we still think that on site from government, we should not be advertising inspirational, tragic stories in any way, anyhow, because we think that this talent show should be focusing on the talent of contestants. Please sit down. I'll now move on to the issues that I've identified in this debate. Firstly, talent over stories. It is a talent show after all, so obviously we are supposed to showcase the talent of people, and the winner should be the person who is the most talented. Now, you may think that why will talent show give way to sympathetic contestants, as that opposition constantly tries to show that people will not be affected by these sympathetic stories at all. However, let me tell you, stories will gain the feelings of empathy, and people will always root for the sympathetic contestant. Why? Because some people feel bad for them too, and they want to see these suffering people become successful too. We're not saying that it's a bad thing. However, we think that this is very irrelevant to talent shows because everyone who's joining a talent show actually works very hard too. However, just because someone has a backstory, a more attractive backstory, they have an upper hand. But in reality, everyone works towards the same goal and everyone works as hard as each other. TV shows also depend on ratings, and they will want their shows to appeal to the public's interest. If the public thinks that if the sympathetic contestant is the people's choice, then the results will also be the sympathetic contestant becoming the winner. Talent show, and this leads to the talent show losing meaning in itself. Secondly, this sympathetic contestant who won may also be very talented, and because of their backstory, they may be disregarded of the victory. Every single contestant will have their own anti-fans, obviously, and these anti-fans will obviously disregard the victory of these contestants and overlook their talents when actually they may be very talented too. Thus, talent shows should be focused on displaying talents and not by using any external factor to affect the results at all. Sympathy ruins the whole entire system of talent shows, and not just people, but including judges can't help feeling sorry for these sympathetic people too. This show instead will end up becoming who has the best stories and who has the most interesting stories that can be showcased to the public, and this causes the talent show's focus to shift to storytelling rather than showcasing of talent. Second issue is that using deeply personal and tragic stories is immoral. Firstly, you're displaying the raw wounds of people and earning money off them. Besides, all these stories are often very much exaggerated, and these stories are often very much exaggerated, and in order to garner more views and attention. It already takes a lot of courage for the person to open up. But imagine having your name associated with words like cancer survivor or divorce. She has divorced parents instead of talented person. It shifts focus from the show entirely, and it is immoral to be exploiting the stories of these people, as these stories are very personal to them and should stay personal to them, not openly advertised and displayed to the public. In conclusion, on our side, we believe that talent shows should stay as talent show. In other words, showcasing talent, and we think that showcasing stories is irrelevant to these talent shows. Thank you.
I thank Government Whip. Now to summarize the case of side opposition, I invite Opposition Whip here.
Now, my speech is going to mainly consist of rebuttals and why that all the points that side opposition have stated that from our side are irrelevant, whereas our statements are actually more relevant than theirs. So first of all, I would like to say that all side government has brought up so far is that these stories defeat the purpose of talent shows, that people use it to get attention. Sure, they have stated what happens when these stories are permitted, but they have not stated why allowing these things to happen is such a bad thing. So I would not like to start with my rebuttals. So this first said that they can almost guarantee that all winners of these talent shows have some sort of deep backstory. But we can see that indeed in the Got Talent shows, an example of these talent shows is that majority of these winners have no deep backstory at all, and have no tragic backstory, and all these people with the tragic backstories are usually lost in the semifinals. Next, these companies use these stories for attention and to get money, and that also what if the finalists are somebody who are of equal talent, have different backstories. So let me explain why if they have different backstories, it's actually acceptable for them to win in the first place. So let's say these two finalists, one of them was somebody who takes singing classes, one of them sings, takes many lessons and is very well educated, is more wealthy compared to the other one, which has never taken any singing lessons, has never does not have the same amount of privilege as the other person. Don't you all think that the person with the person who has worked harder than others, because has had a more tragic backstory, because it wasn't as privileged as the other one, don't you think that person should win? Yes.
Well, can you explain the link between how a backstory includes better conditions for the contestant, and if there's no link, then why include them at all?
Sorry, could you repeat that, P1?
Sorry. Can you please explain what's the link between having backstories and a better condition for contestants? And if there's no link, can you please explain why even include them at all?
But sorry, by that, do you mean their privileges or their certain backgrounds of like that?
I mean, what is the point of having backstories, and how does it benefit contestants' conditions? And if it's not, then why?
No, because if you give these backstories, we can see in status quo that there's nothing actually wrong with these backstories. How much does this actually affect other people besides the show and the contestant? So what exactly is the thing that's wrong with this. So on to my next rebuttal, that con- that, where sorry, I would like to continue with my previous one. So in addition to that one, I would like to add on another rebuttal to the same point that side opposition made, is that if even if these talent shows or contestants use these stories for attention, what is so bad about it? Because people watch talent shows not sit down. People watch talent shows not to see talent. Obviously, that they do watch talent shows to see talent, but the main point of a show, a main point of a show is to entertain. And if these stories help to entertain the viewers, what is so bad about that? Next, second speaker aside, government said that contestants should not be forced to tell their stories. But are you then assuming that they are forced to give their stories because side opposition cannot think of a single example of anyone complaining about this or any case of this happening? Yes.
Is side government suggesting that it is completely okay for companies to be raising money using the tragic stories of someone with a very tragic background?
I'm not, but